Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Multnomah County Chair Deborah Kafoury, and as you heard, I'm joined by Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, Portland City Commissioner Dan Ryan, Multnomah County Commissioners Jessica Vagan-Peterson and Commissioner Lori Stegman. And we also have from Multnomah County our Health Department Director Ebony Clark and the Joint Office of Homeless Services Director Mark Jolin. We know that it is not ideal to have an outdoor press conference on the 1st of November in the cold and the rain, but we're here because COVID remains an active threat to this community's health. And the pandemic continues to fundamentally change and drive the challenges we face and the steps we have to take to address them. The difficult disruptions we've faced have converged to exacerbate the ongoing crisis of homelessness and to drive the growing urgency with which we must meet the needs of people who are surviving outside. The trauma that our neighbors experience every day, surviving outside, doesn't end when we deride it, close our eyes to it, or put it out of view. It ends when those experiencing it are connected to the places, the services, and the relationships that get them closer to the stability that they need to find safety, rest, and ultimately a home. And now, due to an uneven and unexpected economic recovery, Multnomah County and the City of Portland both have better than expected revenues from the last fiscal year. This represents a rare opportunity for us to come together to pool our resources and immediately boost our efforts to address homelessness in our community. Because we all agree that caring for our neighbors who are surviving outside right now remains one of our highest priorities. Together, we are announcing nearly $40 million in investments to meet this urgent need. And that includes more than $30 million for priorities such as more shelter sites and beds, more behavioral health and public health services focused on high-impact areas like Old Town Chinatown, and more street-based service navigation outreach. And more than $7 million to help address high-impact encampments through steps like setting aside more shelter and behavioral health services for the people affected. I want to pause and say how much I appreciate the work that Mayor Wheeler and Commissioner Ryan and their teams have put into making this happen quickly. This joint package of investments demonstrates our shared sense of urgency and our mutual desire to expand and reinforce our system to meet immediate needs in compassionate and effective ways. And I can confidently say that our communication and coordination is tighter and our partnership is stronger than it has ever been. Even in the face of a long and steady and deadly pandemic, thanks to the tireless and innovative work of the Joint Office, we are heading into winter able to offer more shelter beds than we've had before. We have enough capacity to shelter over 2,000 people in congregate, motel, and sleeping pod shelters, more people than any time in our region's history. But it's also clear that we need more. So we're directing $13 million, almost half of Multnomah County's allocation into this joint package, to shelter. The new acquisitions and leases in this package will add 400 bed rooms and pods to our current shelter system. We're also seeing a rapidly growing number of people who are enduring private, painful, and acute behavioral health needs, made profoundly worse by the trauma of homelessness every day, outside, in full view of the public. Nowhere is this gap between the need for behavioral health services and their availability more apparent right now than in our downtown core, most notably Old Town. So we're investing significantly in enhanced mental and behavioral health supports with a particular focus on the Old Town Chinatown neighborhood. New behavioral health in-reach teams will provide a dependable relational community presence to prevent harmful behaviors, de-escalate crises, and connect individuals to ongoing support. These teams are going to be embedded with several organizations, and I want to give thanks to the folks from Blanchet House and the Lansu Gardens and all of the organizations who brainstormed where and how we could make a difference in Old Town. Additionally, we're building on a successful county behavioral health pilot project by adding another motel shelter and connecting its residents to 2 teams of behavioral health specialists. We're also adding an environmental health specialist to help inspect and improve environmental conditions in our camps. And at the heart of this work, including the investments we'll hear about from the Mayor and Commissioner Ryan, is a diverse and passionate workforce that reflects the best of our community's values of compassion and service. But meeting our ambitious hiring goals while competing for workforce from the same labor pool as the private sector is and will be challenging. So to meet this hard reality, we're also investing in people. By funding and hiring retention incentives, we're taking extra steps to make sure that we can find and keep those who are qualified to be on the front lines of this critical work. We all agree that permanent housing is the clear answer to ending people's homelessness, but there are many paths back home, and together these new interventions will keep people on the road to homes of their own. Historically, the resources we've had to address homelessness have paled in comparison to the decades of disinvestment that created and then perpetuated the conditions for what we're seeing, only to be brought to crisis by the pandemic. But between this mid-year adjustment and the Metro Supportive Services funds, we find ourselves at a pivotal point to increase our capacity, to level up our coordination, and most importantly, to make an urgent difference in the lives of people who are surviving outside. I'm deeply grateful that we've been given the opportunity and the resources to meet these pressing needs. And now I'd like to introduce our Portland's Mayor, Ted Wheeler.
Thank you, Rich. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the media for being here today. I know this is a chilly location, but we appreciate your being here and giving coverage to this important issue. I'd like to start by thanking Chair Kafoury for reaching out to us to propose combining both our city and our county resources to focus on the local homeless crisis. And I also want to thank you, Commissioner Ryan, there he is. I want to thank you, Commissioner Ryan, for your ongoing leadership on houselessness. It's really been fantastic to partner with you and your team on crafting this proposal. Commissioner Ryan, as I think most of you are aware, is the city's commissioner in charge of the Joint Office of Homeless Services liaisonship, as well as the Portland Housing Bureau, as well as our liaison to Home Forward. Before I talk about our local efforts, I want to take this opportunity to make a passionate plea to Congress, which is also debating human services funding as I stand before you today. We're in the 3rd decade of a houseless humanitarian disaster for many cities like the city of Portland, and the pandemic has only made this situation much, much worse. More than half of all unsheltered houseless people in our entire country reside in the 3 states of Washington, California, and Oregon. More than half. There are more houseless people on the West Coast because there's more of what contributes to houselessness. High housing costs, which continue to rise at an alarming rate even during this pandemic, and poverty. This was true before the pandemic, and it continues to be further exacerbated by the pandemic. As local government, we're going to continue to do everything we can to prioritize and address houselessness. That's our obligation here in our community. Including the additional funding we're announcing today, the City of Portland is investing a total of $80 million in affordable housing, houselessness, and related services in the current fiscal year, which ends June 30th. But houselessness knows no local or state boundaries, which makes this an important federal issue as well. That is part of why we keep putting money towards the effort and more towards the problem, and yet it still seems to grow. To Congress, I call on you to embrace houselessness as the national humanitarian disaster that it is. America's cities cannot solve homelessness without your help. This crisis will not ebb until there's a federally funded plan to address it. What's needed most? Congress needs to provide the federal right to basic housing for our poor, senior, and disabled Americans who cannot work. And the federal government needs to pay for it with vouchers or other programs. To our congressional delegation, do not stop fighting for this. We want you to come back home from the current Human Services budget debate with your heads held high, because you helped secure a new federal right to housing for poor, senior, and disabled Americans. While cities like ours wait and wait and wait for vital federal assistance, we're doing all that we can at the local level with the resources that we have to make Portland cleaner and more compassionate. Anyone who's traveled Portland streets knows that our city is overwhelmed by unsanctioned encampments that often pose health and safety and environmental risks to those who not only live within them, but also to those businesses and neighborhoods that live immediately adjacent. Too many of Portland's houseless live in squalid, filthy, dangerous locations outdoors, and all too often, they're victims of crime themselves. The impact of these unsanctioned encampments is felt most by housed Portlanders and business owners who are closest to these campsites. Chair Kafoury highlighted elements of this joint proposal that focused on increasing shelter capacity. Following me, Commissioner Ryan will summarize additional investments within the proposal that support service providers and strategic solutions to improve access to basic sanitation. With the remainder of my time, I'll focus on 4 elements of the proposal that provide better services to those unhoused and improve cleanliness for those who are impacted by unsanitary camps. We will provide better and more effective services with our new Street Services Coordination Center. This proposal invests $350,000 to improve coordination of street-level services for unhoused people in our community. The new Street Services Coordination Center created by this proposal will improve city-county collaboration in a way that's never been done before. Day by day, in real time, the center will monitor how many shelter beds are available in each shelter and allow outreach workers to offer shelter beds to unhoused individuals, knowing with confidence that those beds are actually available at that moment. We will fund cleanup of trash left in locations on dangerous terrain. In locations with dangerous terrain, and that's areas like alongside our highways, steep embankments near railroad tracks, former campsite trash is not being picked up in a timely manner. Our joint proposal of $1 million seeks to hire specialty contractors who are trained to work in these dangerous terrains and who are pre-approved to remove trash from various properties beyond our own jurisdictional boundaries, including those of our partners like Metro, ODOT, and others. This will allow for trash to be cleaned up at a faster pace and with much less red tape. We will connect more clients to services by increasing our street outreach workers. There's an unprecedented number of unsanctioned encampments in high-need areas. The houseless people residing within them do not receive sufficient outreach, nor are houseless individuals able to easily connect with local resources. We hear that over and over. Many are unable to leave their personal belongings unattended or to transport them easily. They may be unaware of the services available to them or be confused about where and how to receive various services. There may be distrust in connecting with government resources. The list of reasons goes on and on. We cannot wait for somebody who's living unhoused to find their way to services and shelter. We need to work with them to connect them with those services. This joint proposal of $1,375,000 will hire 20 outreach workers who will go directly to encampments and connect houseless individuals with valuable services and resources both in the central city as well as citywide. This investment will double our current Navigator team count, allowing us to be more proactive in our outreach. In being more proactive, we'll be more compassionate, we'll provide greater accessibility, and we'll ensure that houseless community members can better navigate the resources that are available to them through the city, the county, and other partners. Lastly, we will increase camp cleanups 5-fold. Most of the trash and debris that needs to be cleaned up in the city is related to unsanitary houseless camps or trash at sites that were formerly houseless camps. Current camp removal efforts aren't keeping up in a timely manner with the number of sites that are evaluated for removal or for downsizing. Pre-pandemic, the impact reduction program was once removing 40 to 60 full sites each and every week. For the last year and a half, however, the impact reduction team has only been able to remove 3 to 10 sites per week. Remediation, in the meanwhile, has become far more costly and time intensive. This proposal adds $6.5 million to fund the expansion of our impact reduction program. These funds will enable the impact reduction program to return to pre-pandemic operation levels with an increase in staffing for hazmat remediation and the creation of low-barrier trash programs. In closing, I believe there's a lot of good things that this package will accomplish. However, in closing, I want to reiterate my plea to Congress. We must enact a federal housing guarantee for our poor, our seniors, and our disabled neighbors. We will do our part here locally with the resources we have. That's our obligation. But we need federal planning and funding to address this national humanitarian disaster. Only then will houseless communities across the United States be able to access resources, receive treatment, and work towards self-sufficiency more effectively. While we wait for federal action, we will continue to be compassionate and resilient here in Portland and throughout Multnomah County. We will continue to do all that we can at the local level to support our homeless community and get as many people off the streets as quickly and humanely as possible. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to invite Commissioner Ryan to come up and speak on additional details of our city investment.
Good afternoon. It's good to see people outside of the little Zoom box. How are you? Thank you for being here, and really thanks to Chair Kafoury for making that phone call, and for Mayor Wheeler for responding. And it's a great day. We're committed to shared commitment and compassionately addressing houselessness in our community. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge the respective teams that have put so much heart into this over the last few weeks. Sorry to my own staff who hasn't had a weekend off for a few. I really appreciate how you've dove in to better align, to achieve population results that are critical to achieve this work with so much greater efficiency. And from my team, I want to specifically call out Chief of Staff Kelly Torres and Mark Bond. and the peers at the mayor and the chair's office, and all those in the city's budget office, and also in the joint office, housed in the county. I know that many of you have heard me say, well, maybe you haven't, but anyway, I say this a lot, and that is it's so important to keep looking at how we can break down the silos, how we can realize these priorities for our community and align those arrows. Just picture a lot of arrows going some different directions, and the whole point is to align them so you have greater impact. Today is an incredible representation of what we can accomplish when we break those silos and work together on the behalf of all Portlanders. Some of you also know that I have a personal connection to this work, and Tim, my third oldest brother Tim actually passed away in the lovely month of November, so it was heavy on my heart this morning. He struggled with multiple mental and physical and behavioral health diagnoses. Like many, there was a time in his life where he had some stability. He was treated. When you have those diagnoses, treatment means you usually have a therapist, 12-step programs. You have connection with people that are healthy and are making better choices. It's pretty easy to be triggered and go off that path. Sadly, he stopped taking his medicine, and things progressed pretty rapidly and accelerated as he numbed the pain and used recreational drugs. Heroin was his drug of choice. Like many who pivot into being untreated by healthy supports, it does not end well. So again, his life ended in a public restroom a decade ago. My lived experience influences me to advocate hard inside these virtual walls so we can have much better results for this growing, complex houseless population. It's time to improve our on-ramps to services so we can actually have a home for everyone where someone can actually stay in that home for years with safety and stability. It's my pleasure to share a few more details about this joint investment. First, we'll have additional storage and hygiene solutions for people living outside. The total investment is close to $5 million, with the city investing $3.85 and the county doing an additional $1 million. This includes mobile hygiene, site-based hygiene pods, urban rest stops, day centers, and short and long-term property storage. While our houseless residents are waiting to get into shelter and housing, we have to make sure they are getting the services they need to get stable. This investment, and specifically the study on how to make this investment effectively, are a necessary part of the system. Second, we'll create the Streets Services Coordination Center and align with the joint office and houseless services. This is an equally shared investment between the city and the county. Currently, first responders, outreach navigators struggle to connect unsheltered to shelter beds. And so, it's important that we find the right number of shelter beds so the dedicated folks on the first responder teams, whether it's Portland Street Response, Portland Fire, Portland Police, Impact Reduction Program, parking enforcement, navigation teams, basically, we need the city and the county to herd the cats so they have a better daily assessment on what's available. These 4 new positions, 2 in the Office of Management of the city and 2 in the joint office, who will work to directly connect all the entities that interface with our houseless population and build a coordinated system to refer them into shelter. This work will help us determine where gaps exist so we can drive the necessary work of breaking down the silos and improving our system as a whole. This will change the way shelter providers, first responders like Portland Street Response, community-based organizations, and the community at large to help our houseless neighbors get into shelter. And it'll also help us drive our larger work of coordinating and aligning the many entities that work in our houseless system. Third, we will incentivize recruitment and retention for service providers. The chair mentioned this earlier, and that is that so many people who work to support unhoused Portlanders are improperly compensated for their work. Simply said, when you work in this line of work on the front lines, you're at the risk of being houseless yourself. That needs to change. Service providers are frontline workers. They are engaging with our community, and they deserve a compensation package that reflects their commitment. This piece of the total allocation is $2 million, and the county is providing $1.5 million of that with our $500,000. Together, we'll expand the pipeline of service providers and show them how meaningful their contributions to society are. This investment will fund bonuses to staff support recruitment and retention and incorporate mid-year and 3% pay increases. I've been calling for this investment since I was sworn in last year, and I'm so proud to be standing here today where the city's pitching in for that effort. Fourth, while this is a county-funded piece of our proposal, I want to acknowledge the mental and behavioral health supports that this package contains. I know that our $2.5 million investment in behavior in-reach teams focused in Old Town will make an impact. I also know that Oregon consistently ranks at the bottom of our country when it comes to mental and behavioral health services. And I know how much we need to change that. I'm asking that our state leadership to hear and call for increased support. We need to prioritize health and human services, and I want all state legislators to listen today. This county investment will make a difference, but we need more consistent leadership to change the status quo. I know that you're hearing us, and your commitment to building a more comprehensive solution is in motion. I want to thank my colleagues, Chair Kafoury and Mayor Wheeler, once more for their partnership in this venture. And thank you to the media for being here today and for helping explain this really complex, very complex challenge to our city. We didn't get here overnight. The houseless crisis has been chipping away at the city's soul for over a decade. Today, there's zero denial about the impact of this crisis on our street is having on our city. I know, like my colleagues, my ears listen to gripping and angry stories every single day. I'm pleased today I have more hope than ever than my first 13 months in office about the alignment of resources, the willingness to streamline services, and really just to play to our strengths with greater role clarity between the county and the city. We must continue to innovate, work smarter, and this is definitely a step in the right direction. As many of you know, our office is also taking the lead right now to locate, build, and manage with the county a thriving new on-ramp system that is terribly needed, safe to rest villages. The myths and the fears about these result-focused services is vast. So before you make up any story about them, please, I encourage everyone to visit our website in Portland, Oregon, anyway, it's on our website. And you can find Safe Trust Villages. I'm not reading all that. For more information about our work, providing alternative shelters for Portlanders experiencing houselessness, and we look forward to having more engagement with all of you as we build these across our city. With that, I'm very happy all of us are very happy to take questions. I'm turning this over to someone over there, right there, all right.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. So now we can take some questions. Rich Chapman is here with a microphone. If you raise your hand, Rich is going to go to you so that we can get your questions. They can hear them and direct who's going to answer.
This is Shane Dixon, Town Office of the Oregon. Can I ask two questions? One for the county, one for the city. First question is for Madam Chair. In terms of the properties that you're looking at to potentially lease or purchase for new shelter beds, have those locations been identified yet? Can you give a little more detail about where you might be in that process?
The question is about the locations of the new properties that we are going to be purchasing and or leasing. And we are, as you can imagine, in negotiations right now, so we are not able to identify those, but we have identified them. We are in active negotiations. We just aren't able to publicly identify them. Those will be coming very, very soon. They vary, but as we know, this is an urgent situation. These are dollars that we were not expecting to come. We want them to be out in the public very, very quickly. So that's as much as I can tell you right now. But as the week unfolds, we will have more information for you.
Creating new shelter beds, what does very quickly mean? What's a reasonable expectation?
That is a good question. because these dollars were unexpected and because we know there's an emergency, we're not looking to build out new shelters. As you mentioned, sometimes when you purchase a building, it takes a lot of time to renovate the facility. So if we can have something up and running in a month or 2 months, that's urgent and that's fast.
Yeah, I can follow up with a question about timeline. My question is for Commissioner Ryan. So we've heard from business owners in Middletown.
Can you say who you are?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to start with business owners. So we have questions for Commissioner Ryan. Hi. They don't feel like city leaders have actively enough urgency on issues of violence or homelessness like their ones. What can you do to assure them that you guys are going to do this quickly? What are you doing for them?
I'm challenged right now. I missed half your question. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm following up a question about the town. We heard from business owners in the whole town, and they tell us that they don't feel that city leaders have acted with enough urgency on the issues of violence and homelessness. So what can you do to assure the public that you guys are going to act quickly? What can you say about it?
So your question is about the fact that people in downtown, especially Old Town, are disappointed that we're not moving with enough urgency to do. Okay, yeah. This didn't happen overnight. A lot of us were calling out the challenges in Old Town for years. However, it is really important that we keep building these services because in Portland, Oregon, we're under the Ninth Circuit Court ruling where we have to actively provide services before we could ever remove someone. And so one reason it was really important to get busy on better on-ramp supports was to actually move houseless residents into that. This is about services. This is about 24-hour supervision. It's about getting people with just enough willingness to start to embrace those services so they can build resilience. So when they move into an apartment, they actually have a better success rate. We have to measure the data on that, of course. So that's the action we can keep taking. And then we also have to keep looking at why we were talking about these safe rest stop places is where we can take houseless individuals to get some care on the ground, if you will. If this is really a crisis and we're supposed to act more like FEMA, then we need to provide more on-site responses. We also are looking, it's so connected to community safety as well. And that's why the Portland Street Response Expansion, which is accelerating during our fall bump process, is also connected to this. Getting someone to say yes to services is a big deal. And perhaps that's behind your question. And so that's something that we will know more about as we improve the amount of navigation members we have on the streets that are building relationships with the houseless and helping them trust the government services more and then getting them into a pathway to build resilience. So when you look at the combination of the investments with both the navigation team, which is under the leadership of Mark Jolin at the Joint Office of Houselessness, coupled with in the city side of urban reduction work, it's why that is such an important key role to herd the cats so we can streamline those services quicker. But we are, as a society, having to face the challenges of what it's like when someone does refuse those services. And that's a next step that we have to keep looking at. So I'm not denying the question, I'm just saying the complexity means how important it is to take one step, take another step, and start to get results. And again, we're in an emergency, so we can't let perfection get in the way of good. We have to start doing something to get action so we start to see results, and we'll keep learning as we go. Does the mayor want to add anything?
This is about Old Town Chinatown. Couldn't quite hear the question.
Oh, yeah, you can focus more on Old Town Chinatown.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, great. Sorry, weirdly enough, it's hard for us to hear the questions, so I apologize. But this, with regard specifically to Old Town Chinatown, these proposals were in measure shaped by feedback we got from Old Town Chinatown. Sam Adams, who's hiding in the back there, and his team have been meeting with leaders in that community pretty much on a weekly basis. And what we heard from them loudly and clearly was concerns about safety, concerns about houselessness, and concerns about livability, trash and graffiti. And so these proposals include improvements around safety. They include the proposals that we've been discussing around houselessness and the work that we're doing to increase not only the impact reduction team, but also regular litter collection and graffiti abatement. I believe those will go a long way towards addressing their concerns as far as this proposal is concerned. I will just add, with sort of for extra context here, that we also deployed bicycle police to Old Town Chinatown at their request, so that's now been going on for a couple of weeks. In addition to that, we've put together a grant program to help some of the small business owners and operators to be able to defray the cost of private sector security. So we are in communication, and I believe when they see the totality of these proposals, they'll agree with me that their concerns have been heard, if not fully addressed.
Access these services. What is the city and county doing to encourage people on the streets to access these services? Also, another question: when will the public see an impact from this money on their community?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. Thank you for the question, Dan Ryan, City Commissioner. I think that it's definitely the navigation team investment. What I've learned in my 13 months in office, for example, when we were cleaning up Laurelhurst Park, Mark Jolin and his team at the navigation team were out there working with the houseless in Laurelhurst Park for a week. And before that, for months, some of them. But it takes a while to establish the rapport and to really understand what their needs are, and then to build that trust. And so we really do need more navigation folks on the ground building those relationships. And that is a pathway to saying yes to services. So that's why that's a big part of the investment.
When will the public see this money actually make an impact on the streets? Especially with we have the kind of urgency. There's some businesses that are being impacted across Portland. Will the public see an impact on months, years? Start seeing the streets,
So people will begin to see the results relatively quickly, but I also want to be clear, we're hiring new positions and we're establishing new programs or expanding existing ones. That obviously doesn't happen overnight. For example, with the impact reduction team, by increasing that fivefold, that means we're going to be adding vehicles and we're going to be adding personnel. So I would say weeks to months, but certainly you will begin to see the results and feel the results fairly quickly.
I'll just add that the dollars that we're talking about today are additional, and both the city and the county passed our budgets at the end of June, beginning of July, which were very large in themselves and had a lot of new services online. We've tailored and made sure that the investments that we're going to make with these new dollars dovetail, enhance, and coordinate better between the city and the county. So you won't be able to say that this person served is a result of these dollars necessarily. It's the result of the work that we've been doing all along, because we felt this urgency, we felt this crisis to get people off the streets and into housing.
Rich, that's why you said don't touch the microphone. I did hear you earlier. In answer to your question, there will not be a change in the protocols. That has not been contemplated. This is bringing on additional employees and vehicles to work with the impact reduction team under the existing protocols.
Mike Leonard from KGW. This is for Mayor Wheeler. I guess it was less than 2 weeks ago, you had mentioned, that you'd like to focus on the unsanctioned games, but you couldn't say more at the time. Is this the board? Is this what you had in mind about going to set a goal? Should be 0 unsanctioned games in Portland? Is this heading down how to?
I believe the goal should be to remove as many people from the streets as quickly and humanely as possible. And the impact reduction team is part of a larger series of services, but when I was talking about camp remediation for those that meet the objective criteria around safety, health, or the environment, this is what I mean. And I wasn't being coy about it. I just didn't know what level of resources I had available, how it would shake out with all of the other requests from my fellow commissioners, and how many personnel and vehicles we'd actually be able to deploy. And so today you're hearing that answer. We're going to see a 5-fold increase in those operations. Thank you, Mike.
How much was the county's budget surplus total for this fall? And the second is, how many total shelter beds are available now that you're adding this up?
So to the first part of your question about the county's budget surplus that we received for fiscal year 21, it's about $30.4 million. And tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, our board will have a board briefing. The items we've discussed here are focused on our joint investments with the city, but there's some additional pieces that the county is going to be funding that we'll talk about tomorrow morning.
What's the total shelter beds?
For the total number of shelter beds, I'm going to call up the man who knows all, our Joel.
There he is.
So can you repeat the question just in terms of the total number of shelter beds we will have after these investments? So we're going into this winter in Multnomah County with about 1,750 beds, motel rooms, and sleeping pods. So the total capacity is more than that number of individuals because motel rooms and pods can sleep more people. With these investments, we're looking at about a 400 bed increase over time with these properties that we're in negotiations with right now.
Question in response to this surplus. And is this something we're expecting to see again? Did we see it in the future? Or how exactly did it come about?
For the county, I will tell you that while these are one-time only dollars, we will have they were very unexpected. I have to give a shout out to our county economist who's been spot on for years. And just the business surplus and income tax that they collected was higher than they expected, a lot higher. So for fiscal year 21, we have an additional $30.4 million. They're still analyzing what it's going to look like for fiscal year 22, which we're in right now. We will be having a budget forecast coming up here at the end of November. And at that time, we'll have specifics. We're assuming that there will be additional dollars as well. We just don't know the exact amount yet.
I'm going to jump in as well. It's about what you prioritize. So what's wonderful about today is that we took this opportunity to ignite some additional investments. They must be successful. This has to be our number one priority. This and community safety are at the top of everyone's list for our economy to come back. So if we don't focus on this, the houseless crisis and the challenges and the impacts to everyone, not just houses, also those that are housed, obviously our businesses, people that come here to play and to spend money, we need that. And so if we don't focus on houselessness and community safety first, we won't have our economy coming back in the way that Portlanders should expect.
Awesome. It looks like we've got through everybody. So we'll be posting this on Multco Presents. We have Rich Chapman, myself, and Margot Week if you need to get in touch with us, and Dennis Thrall. So thanks again, everybody, for coming. And we will see you hopefully in better weather.